Time magazine recently released an article that seems impossible. They say a group of scientists have brought back a direwolf, or rather, three direwolves, which are animals that have been extinct for over 10,000 years. They obviously have great significance to just kind of the popular consciousness, and that is largely thanks to Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, where the first scene that George R.R. Martin envisioned for the series was that of the Stark family happening across a dead direwolf and her six pups, each of which is given to one of the Stark children. It seems as though the scientists who created these new direwolves, quote unquote, I'll get into that in a second, were fans of at least Game of Thrones, maybe not A Song of Ice and Fire, based on the fact that one of the names of these wolves is Khaleesi, that being a title of Daenerys Targaryen, which there are a lot of better titles they could have gone with for this female wolf, like Nymeria or Arya or Lyanna, but I digress. I have a number of thoughts on this development, both as it relates to the popular consciousness, A Song of Ice and Fire, and just, I don't know, philosophy and science in general. So this video is a little different than my usual, but I figured I'd just, say something. How this happened is quite interesting. The company that created these wolves, known as Colossal, which appropriate, has created three specimens, and it's not Jurassic Park-esque. There aren't any mosquitoes in amber with dinosaur blood, but it is kind of similar in that both instances aren't quite cloning animals. In Jurassic Park, we see that there are bits of other animals' DNA inserted into the dinosaurs' DNA in order to kind of gap fill and create what we would essentially call dinosaurs, but still have some elements of them that are not truly and completely authentic. In this instance, the wolves are taking the DNA that has recently been kind of unearthed and decoded from direwolves themselves and changing the DNA of existing gray wolves to match that of direwolves. Specifically, these wolves have about 20,000 genes, and only 20 edits to 14 genes within a common gray wolf yielded the results that you are seeing on your screen right now. This has led to people kind of debating whether or not this is true cloning or not, or true revival of direwolves as a species. While it isn't cloning, it's hard to say whether or not this will raise the bar of actually being a revival of the species. Physically, they seem pretty much identical. I have on screen the images of a 5-month-old gray wolf and this 5-month-old direwolf, and it seems as though they're pretty goddamn similar. It's worth noting, though, that the similarities here are genetic and are going to be physical, but there could be elements that are missing here. Notably, we have no idea what any extinct animal that predates our modern consciousness did. We have no idea about their behavior, their mindsets, their patterns, their habits, and it could be said that gray wolves might be kind of taking over that just mindset from the dire wolves, given the fact that we are seeing a now modified gray wolf turned into a dire wolf rather than a direwolf purely. So while it might physically resemble a direwolf, and a lot of these behaviors that it is exhibiting mirror that of wolves we currently know, we don't know that those behaviors are going to be fully accurate to what might have happened 10,000 years ago. This is the same company, for reference, who made those woolly mice from a month or two ago that popped up in the news everywhere, and they are currently trying to recreate the woolly mammoth, which is going to be a much longer process. The article details this, which I will link in the description. You should read the article, it's fascinating, that the nearest modern ancestor of the woolly mammoth, that being the Asian elephant, has a gestation period of 22 months, which is the longest of any mammal, and given that fact, it's going to be a much longer time frame to even have a chance of seeing a woolly mammoth, as they hope to have it done by 28, but we'll see if that actually ends up happening. If you're like me, you find this fascinating, but there is a question that keeps ringing in your ears like John Connington's bells. Most notably, why? Why is this being done? The article poses a few good reasons to look into things like this, to encourage kind of the resurrection or at least kind of modifying of existing species to mirror species that have died out, and that is to kind of preserve ecological niches that might otherwise die out. We are in an age of massive extinction here. There are a number of animals dying out every given month, week, whatever, due to human intervention. And the thought is, through genetic modification, individuals can reinsert these animals into environments and ensure that it remains unchanged. But that change is going to very much affect things regardless, as that's going to be an alteration from what was already altered by humans, and it's unclear if that will revert things to previous states or whether it will just continually spiral and it'll just be a new invasive species. Those why questions also seem kind of weird when looking at the animals that are currently being produced. Woolly mice, neat little novelty that's not really going to have any effect. Mammoths and direwolves, however, are these massive animals that are going to be apex predators in the direwolf's case, or just massive shifts in any given ecosystem in the woolly mammoth's case. Both of these creatures are now being created, and at least in the direwolf's case, it doesn't sound like they're ever going to be introduced into the wild, which is for the best. I wouldn't want to destroy America's ecosystem if that would happen with direwolves. I don't know if it would in the modern just kind of era. I don't want to be hunted by large wolves. That's just a me thing. But regardless, it does seem weird that we are creating these animals just to schemingly kind of study them and keep them in captivity. But overall, I think there could be some good uses to this. This same company has worked with red wolves to try to recreate and allow those to reproduce as they have gone extinct in the past. But yeah, I'm not sure about dire wolves just coming back. This brings me back to the Wolves' connections with Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. In that series, the return of direwolves is the first indication that magic is returning to the world once again. The previous 170 years before the main series begins is a period where things much resemble our own world. It's sort of mundane, and the magical elements become much more muted and fall into the background. But as we pick up with the series itself, we see White Walkers beginning to stir beyond the wall. We see dragons born again for the first time in hundreds of years. And we see direwolves south of the wall for the first time in generations. In our world, it seems like direwolves might kind of be giving the same indication. Not that magic is returning to the world, so to speak, but that sometimes that science that we as humans are creating can sort of mirror that, and that we're entering a new era of scientific exploration that is going to very much resemble perhaps what magic might entail in a fantasy series, though obviously much more grounded and based in actual discussion and data and what have you. Martin has written that magic is a sword without a hilt. There's no safe way to grasp it. And I think that that can at times describe many things in our real world. Power, for one, and I think in this instance, advances in science, for another. These are very interesting and powerful developments that do reshape the way we think about the world, but overall, it's unclear whether or not they will ultimately benefit our world or hurt it. As what if one of these direwolves escapes and ends up being an invasive species? It's unclear exactly what's going to happen from here, if these wolves are indeed dire wolves or not. There has been a lot of debate on that topic, but overall, it is undoubtedly a massive change for the status quo, given that animals are starting to become modified in ways such as this by altering their genetic code itself. Actually, as I'm recording this, The Hollywood Reporter has reported, as they are like to do, that George R. R. Martin and Peter Jackson are both advisors and investors in this company, Colossal, and that the big man himself, George Martin, has actually gone down to visit the enclosure and the habitat of these direwolves, which is really cool to hear. And maybe that'll be some influence of just seeing what these wolves' behavior and physicality is like in real life could have some impact on, I don't know, how they're portrayed in the Winds of Winter, should that ever be released. But I don't know. That sounds like a fun activity. Hopefully, it provides inspiration and doesn't further distract. At least we can add playing God to the rapidly growing list of things that Martin's decided to do before finishing this book. But honestly, I'm quite happy for him. This would be a really cool thing to be in on. Also, I think the enclosure is like in a secret location, so my next mission is to find that and report back. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, and it just really helps grow the channel. I mostly talk about A Song of Ice and Fire on this channel. This is a little different than my usual fare, but I don't know. I had thoughts, and I felt like sharing those thoughts, and this seemed like a good place to do it. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know in the comments. If not, let me know in the comments too. It all helps. It's all gravy. And I hope you'll join me for many videos in the future. I also apologize if I'm a bit more gravelly than usual today. As the softball tournament I mentioned last video, I was yelling for about 2 days straight, so I'm still in a bit of recovery mode. But goodbye, everyone.